Welcome to TSPN, where we cover all of Tyrone sports. I'm your host, Logan Remberger, joined with our special guest today, Mr. John Hollywood Harlow. How are you doing, John?
It's great to be here, Logan. Thanks for finally having me.
Yeah, it's been a while, and I've been kind of pushing it off. But, John, before we get into this podcast, I want to ask you about your nickname, Mr. Hollywood John Harlow. How'd you get that?
I was living in North Carolina. Actually, I was visiting my mom in North Carolina, and I heard a DJ named Hollywood Jack Boston at B100 in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I wound up working at that station one day. But I loved the name. It was Hollywood Jack Boston. I was taught at a young age that radio is the theater of the mind. So if you want to be bigger than something, be bigger. So I became Hollywood John Harlow at the Overstuffed Swivel Chair Plush Penthouse Studios of the Big 13 WTRN as a high school kid. So kind of a cool thing.
Stuck.
Never left.
That's awesome. John, you recently retired. You want to tell the audience where'd you retire from?
I was the public affairs officer at the James E. Van Zandt VA Medical Center. It was 2 great years. It was a chance to come home and work and serve fellow veterans here in central Pennsylvania. And it was just time. I mean, I'm getting old. I'm getting tired. It's tougher to get up in the morning than it used to be. So it was just one of those. I did what I could. I did a bunch of really cool things. Now it's time to dedicate myself to being here at home and doing things at home.
Now, John, I'd say you haven't aged a bit. I could say you still look 30, but tell us about your life story and how you became a radio host, because that's amazing.
Well, it goes way back to when I was 10 years old. We used to go to Oak Ridge Elementary, which is where Federal Carbide is now. And then they moved us to Adams when they closed Oak Ridge, and I met Ted Simpson. His dad was Kerry, who owned WTRN back in the day. And when kids are out playing cops and robbers and all that stuff, Ted and I would be in the basement because he had like a mini radio setup where we had a captive audience of Mr. Simpson. And we would go down and we would play radio. We'd actually mix records and talk on the microphone, and we'd bug him, and finally, when we were 14, he gave us a shot at the Tyrone Teen Review, where we did a top 20 countdown of the top 20 hits in Tyrone and talked in between. So we started at 14, and it's been going ever since. And here I am, 58, and I still have radio's in my blood.
I mean, it's a passion. It 100% is. It's a passion. You have to love it to make it big.
Unless you're Howard Stern or Scott Shannon or Elvis Duran or somebody like that, you're not making millions. I mean, but it's something that you have 15 seconds over the intro of a song to get a point across to somebody and make sure that they listen to it. It teaches you how to communicate really good, really fast, and try to get your point across. So I think radio is one of the best ways to be a good communicator.
Now, you said that you started at a young age, and you helped Ted. What'd you do after high school? I know you have a military background. Tell the audience about the military background that you did.
Well, after I went to Shippensburg, I graduated from Tyrone in '84, went to Shippensburg for a year, and I had an epiphany there. We had a radio production professor, and it was a senior class, and I'm a freshman in a senior class, and we had a snowstorm, and he couldn't make it from Harrisburg to Shippensburg. And they said, should we cancel the class? He says, no, have Harlow teach it. And here I am, a freshman, teaching a senior radio production class. So I'm thinking, what am I going to learn in my next 3 years if I'm already teaching a senior class? So I just decided that I was done. I went to North Carolina, lived with my mom, worked at a couple stations down there, came back home, went back to North Carolina again, and it just wasn't making it. I was only part-time everywhere I'd ever go. There was never any full-time openings. My uncle said there's a career field in the Army called broadcast journalism. You could do it. And I'm like, what the heck, why not? And I figured I'd get my GI Bill and use it for college, which I never did. I mean, I got the GI Bill, but I never went back to school because it was, again, one of those things, what am I going to learn when I've done this all these years? So I went to basic training at Fort Knox, went to advanced individual training at Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana, which is outside of Indianapolis. My first duty assignment was Shape, Belgium, which is NATO military headquarters. Came back, went to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey for a couple months, went to Desert Storm, back to Fort Monmouth, and got out. So I went, came home, worked at WPRR in Altoona for a little bit. They let me go. I had a no-compete clause where I couldn't work within 100 miles of Altoona, so I joined the Army again. Went to St. Louis, got an ex-wife. Went to Korea for 2 years, got out, when I got out the second time, I went to Gainesville, Florida. They upset the staff and let everybody go. I came home, worked at what's now Rocky, but it was Mix at the time, in Altoona. Couldn't get full-time there, so Mark Leberfinger hired me as a sports editor at the Herald. And after he left, I became the news editor, so I was at the Herald from 98 to 04, telling stories about Tyrone kids. It was funny, my first meeting with Coach Franco, because he always kind of wasn't pleased with the media with the way the Altoona Mirror treated him back in the day. And my first meeting with Coach Franco, I said, Coach, I'm here to tell good stories about the kids that play. We can win 500-0, we could lose 75-0. I don't care. We're going to find a good story about a kid who did something special during the game. And we've always had a great relationship since. As a matter of fact, he's the one who called me and said, hey, would you do Tyrone football this year, which was really cool because I had done just about everything possible at WTRN, but I never did Tyrone football.
That's amazing. I mean, John Franco, Coach Franco, he's a hard one to please. He's a lot of people he's not on good terms with, but I mean, that's amazing that Franco reached out to you, let you broadcast the games. And I remember, going back, I played football this year, going back, looking for a play in there, and I just hear your voice, and I mean, you're always talking good about the kids. I know Seth Hoover, I've actually made a video of the football team, like a hype video for the playoffs, and I used your voice in the background just because, you're always talking good about it, so it was just amazing.
I bleed orange and black. That one I can promise you, no matter what, I will bleed orange and black. I'll bet anybody anything if Tyrone's playing. I don't care what I lose because I'm going to back our kids 100% of the time. And one of the things that was really cool this year, when I was sports editor at the Herald, I covered Tyrone. The one thing I never did until this year, you know how Thursdays, after you guys do special teams and walk through, and you guys have your meeting where you go over the charts and everything like that, that's always been the sacred ground. I've never stepped foot in there during that, and Coach Franco invited me in, and I got to sit there and be part of it and see you guys the day before a game, and it gives you that extra perspective. It's not like I'm just some professional announcer getting a book saying, okay, here are these kids. I'm watching you practice. I'm seeing you guys. I've known most of your parents, so it's really cool that I was able to be a part of that this year.
Yeah, and you get to see what the kids are feeling, what the kids are seeing. You see the energy. That's always going to help you with the broadcasting, especially you know what you're talking about. We all know that. You've been in this career for so long, but it's just amazing that you were able to adjust from radio host to broadcasting live. Now, I do have a question. This podcast, it's all edited. Do you ever get, when you first started, did you ever get nervous that, I might mess up, I might do this, something wrong?
I think I was too young and too dumb to think like that because I just wanted to talk into the microphone. Yeah. I wanted to have people hear my voice. And we always used to joke it whenever we were kids at TRN. It's if we get 7 people to listen to us, we're big. And then when I was in Korea, we had millions listening because they listened to American radio so they could learn English. When I was in Saudi Arabia, it was cool that I got to be the voice of our soldiers who were in the middle of a war. I got to work at WKLB in Boston, which is a top 10 market, something any kid from any small town who had dreams of radio had a chance to do. So it's just been something that, I always joke about it. I've been lucky in life that I kind of fall into almost everything.
So when you were looking for a job, you said that you were having part-time jobs but never could get a full-time job. Mm-hmm. It was that just the market of radio hosts, everyone was full on things, or were people concerned with your talent?
No, it was never a concern with the talent. It was always everywhere I would go. When I went to Wilmington, the station I wanted to work at was filled, but they had weekend stuff or they had fill-in stuff. So any chance I could get on the air, I would. In reality, the only full-time radio jobs I ever had was KISS 105 in Gainesville, PRR in Altoona, and here at TRN. Everywhere else, I've been around the world and I've worked in a lot of great radio stations, but it was a side gig while I was working for the Army.
So we were walking up here and you said that you mistakenly got into the career you did.
Yeah, it was a pure accident. Whenever I became a public affairs officer, I was the editor of the Herald. I was working 60 hours a week. In my last year at the Herald, I made $22,000 a year. So I got tired of eating ramen. And one of my friends from Korea, who we would cross paths later, it was, thank God for her, it was the best experience of my life. Barb Lewandowski said, "Why don't you become a government civilian?" I'm like, "Yeah, they're going to hire me." I mean, I didn't make it through college. I mean, I was borderline troublemaker when I was in uniform. She goes, "No, you'll get in because you're a veteran. They do veterans preference." And I got in and went to the Milwaukee Recruiting Battalion, was there for a year and a half, went to the Training and Doctrine Command at Fort Monroe, Virginia, was there for 4, went to the Natick Soldier Systems Center as the Chief of Public Affairs up there for almost 13 and got a second ex-wife there. And then Barb called me again. The media relations position at Arlington National Cemetery opened up, and Barb was the Chief of Public Affairs. And it was an accident. I mean, I applied, didn't get it the first time. I was second. Somebody who was with, I believe, Disabled American Veterans in DC was the person they selected, but she turned it down. So I got the opportunity to go to Arlington National Cemetery as a media relations officer because I was the second choice, but I still wound up with the opportunity. And if you ever get a chance, go to Arlington. It's the one place in the world you're surrounded by heroes. I mean, there's 400,000 folks who rest there. There's 267,000 graves. And every time I went in the cemetery, whether it was going to work in the morning or coming back from lunch, I'd get a chill up my back because you are surrounded by American heroes.
That's amazing. I mean, your life story is just one to tell. There's so much in your life that it's amazing that, you know, you couldn't find a job, but you just kept going. You never stopped looking for a job. You never stopped pursuing your career. A lot of people in that, you know, I even feel like myself, if I'm out there and I'm going for this, I'm not getting it, I feel like I might take a different path, but you stayed on the same exact path and just pushed through everything. That's amazing, John.
I mean, again, it's luck, it's timing, it's having a good background. Once I became a public affairs officer in the Army, it's like I'm a broadcaster true and true. When I was in radio, in uniform, I won 2 Keith L. Ware Awards for Army broadcasting, which is the best across the Army.
Wow.
As a civilian, I won 2 nationals, 1 Thomas Jefferson, which is the best in DOD, and I won 5 National Association of Government Communicators, which is all government, federal, state, local, every branch possible, and we won 5 of those. I mean, I'm the all-time leader in local level Keith L. Ware Awards, which is at your major command, and I have 32 of them. So the resume speaks for itself, but it's a heck of a lot of hard work that got into it.
Yeah, when we were texting, getting everything set up, I asked you some questions, asked you about your accomplishments, and there's too many to tell. How long do you think it would take if you named every single one?
We might be here tomorrow.
Name your top 5, your favorite 5.
Well,
the ones that mean
there's
the
a
most
couple
to you.
that are really cool that aren't in the top 5 that mean as much to me. I mean, I was on the field at Gillette Stadium, almost got run over by Gronk.
Oh.
Whenever the Patriots did salute to service, and we'll talk, that's part of number 1, but it was really cool to be a part of that. I was, I had my own spot. Like if you watch the White House, whenever they do it, you see their spot on the lawn, and each reporter has that. Well, they do the same thing at NATO headquarters whenever the world leaders come in, and I had my own spot because I would report from NATO world headquarters. I was very blessed to not get hit by the Scud missile that hit in Tyrone, Saudi Arabia on February 26, 1991. I was in that barracks 15 minutes earlier, but it was my turn to buy donuts for work the next day. So I was across the street at the supermarket when I heard the explosion. I got to meet General Schwarzkopf. I got to meet so many great people. I was in Victory Lane with Tony Stewart at Pocono, and we joked about going to a sprint car race. So it's been a very, very lucky career. But if I would go through my top 5, probably number 5, I want to say it was, I don't remember what I had as number 5, but I know my big 3 is General Green Avenue, the street that leads from to our Army installation at Natick, Massachusetts. Our general, General Harold Green, he used to be our commanding general. He was the one general who was killed in Afghanistan, and I worked with the town to have the street renamed General Green Avenue.
That's awesome.
The unknown soldier, when he was laid to rest in 1921, I was at Arlington for the 100th commemoration, and we were able to basically almost recreate the 100th commemoration. But we did a 6-month media campaign, so between social media, TV, radio, newspaper, magazines, we hit 2 billion sets of eyes with our coverage over 6 months. And we did a procession where the people could lay flowers at the tomb, and we had over 48,000 people lay flowers in 2 days. And probably the biggest one, I had a friend named Justin Fitch. He retired as a major, but when he was in Iraq in 2007, they lost 14 people in their unit over the past 2 weeks, and he found out the day before that his best friend was killed in Afghanistan. And he had the M4 to his head, flipped it from safe to fire, and was going to pull the trigger, and for some reason the 4.5 pounds of trigger pressure never happened. And he swore to God that he heard his best friend yell in his head, which is FIDO, which is military for F it and drive on. So he put it back to safe, went to a chaplain for help, because in 2007, if you had any kind of mental health issues, they didn't get you treatment in the military. They said, thanks for playing, we'll get another one, drive carefully, have a good rest of your life, and good luck. Well, he got treatment, he got help, went through the chaplain, went through counseling on his own, and he was training for his physical training test, and when he was running, his intestines exploded, and they found out he had stage 4 colon cancer. And he was 30 at the time. So he decided he was going to leave the world a better place, and he founded, so he created a group called Team Minutemen, who helped raise money for a group called Carry the Fallen, where they would do ruck marches, the Boston Marathon route, with 50 pounds in their rucksack to carry the weight that somebody else couldn't. And originally when he came up to me, he says, John, I need you to help me tell my story. I'm like, Justin, I just watched this movie. My dad just passed away from cancer. I don't want to watch this again. He said, so you're going to tell a dying man no? What are you going to say to that? So we wound up telling his story. We hit the local newspaper in Framingham, Massachusetts. The Boston Globe did a feature. Every TV station in Boston did a feature. Army Times did a feature. The Army did a feature. General Radio Dierno, who was the chief of staff of the Army, when he came to visit Natick, searched out Justin Fitch because he read his story that we wrote out for Army.mil. USA Today did a full page on him for Suicide Prevention Month. The Patriots honored him as Salute to Service, and that day they raised $75,000 of contributions that came from people at Gillette Stadium who saw him on the big screen. And then the Fox News did a piece on him, MSNBC did a piece on him, but the CBS Evening News, for the Veterans Day piece, they actually sent a camera crew up. They did the ruck march with him, and then they interviewed him while he was getting a chemo treatment.
Really?
And by the time he passed away at the age of 32, they raised over $500,000 to get a camp off the ground outside of Fort Knox. And the first cabin they built is called Fort Fitch. And to have a small role in what he did is probably something I'll never forget.
That's amazing, and you took your talents worldwide, and I mean, it's just amazing. That's a beautiful story. I'm definitely gonna have to look into that. That's something I'd read, and if I was the viewers, I'd definitely look into that too, because that's amazing what you did. I mean,
if you Google Justin Fitch, CBS News, the story is there, and it was a Veterans Day story, so they didn't do the president laying the wreath at the tomb.
Yeah.
They did Justin's story about how he helped save veterans' lives. I mean, I was eating dinner with him one night. He got a phone call. He says, John, I got to go. And I'm like, what's going on? He says, there's a veteran ready to take his life. He needs my help. And I didn't see him again for 2 days. He said he got him into treatment, got him help, and then that person came back 3 months later and did a ruck march with us because Justin took that extra time to save somebody's life.
what will you miss within your time of retirement?
I'll miss helping people. And that's one of the best things about it. When I joined the VA as a public affairs officer, there was a change in veterans who are eligible for VA healthcare because of the PACT Act, which basically helps if there's any kind of toxins a soldier, sailor, airman, marine has been around. So in Vietnam, it was Agent Orange. In Desert Storm, it was the oil fires. And I was an idiot hanging outside of a helicopter with a video camera, monkey harness to my shoulder, with my baseball hat out backwards, shooting video of the oil fires. So I'm inhaling that smoke like it's my job. And in Iraq and Afghanistan this time around, it was the burn pits.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have been expected to be toxically exposed. I mean, Justin, that's probably how he got his cancer, was because of the burn pits. Well, now if you're a veteran who served in Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, or Afghanistan, you're automatically eligible for VA healthcare. And I helped over the past 2 years get 5% more enrollments into VA Medical Center to help veterans get health care where you have somebody who cares about them, knows about them, understands them, to make sure that they get their health care. And we do it faster and better than a lot of the local hospitals around here.
Any big plans for your next chapter of life? I mean, I wouldn't know anything about retirement, but...
Well, there's a couple things on the horizon. One is I'm focusing on my online radio station, eagleonlineradio.com, because like I said, it'll never leave me. So I built a station in my house, and we've done it since August of 2019, and I have disc jockeys all over the country who do their shows. I mean, Tank Sherman used to work at B94 Pittsburgh. He does my morning show. I have a guy, John Black, who used to work in Chicago, does mid-afternoons. I do 3 to 7. It's just a really cool little radio station. It gives us a chance to do what we love to do.
Yeah.
But if there's one thing I learned out of life, and Carrie Simpson taught me this at a very young age, is always give back. I mean, I learned how to communicate through Carrie, because on top of learning how to talk over a 15-second ramp and say what you need to in one shot, we would broadcast the parades in town. So Memorial Day, we're out there. 4th of July, we're in Osceola. And he taught me how to broadcast a parade. And the first time I did one, it's like, oh, there's a red fire truck, there's a green fire truck there. And he's like, John, there's people in Pennsylvania House who can't get out, or there's people somewhere whose son or daughter serves with the Hookies, or son or daughter is in the band, or you need to be able to paint that picture to them so they feel like they're there. So the next time the parade, it's like, and the Hookies had this such and such pumper who pumps 57,000 gallons a second that can put out fires and blah, blah, blah. So I learned everything I could about the units in the parade to be able to paint that picture better.
Yeah.
And in this idea of giving back and serving, I mean, I think my next little piece of fun is I'm going to run for mayor of Tyrone.
There we go. We've been waiting on that.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I'm friends with Bill Latchford. We've been friends since we were your age. I mean, we went to high school together. But Bill's been on council for 24 years. He's been the mayor for 8 years. And the one thing that kind of spurred me was whenever he did a podcast and said that he was a cheerleader of Tyrone. I don't want a cheerleader as the mayor. I want somebody who's going to lead. And that's what you need, is you need leadership. And I want to make sure that with the council that we have, and I know most of the people on the council, and they're very into making Tyrone a better place, I think the leader to be able to do that would be me.
Now, what are you're running for mayor? You know, it's gonna be a selection. So, what is one thing you want to help or you want to change within the Tyrone community?
There's a couple things I want to. After the overdose deaths we had last week, I mean, 3 of them in one day, and there was more overdoses who were treated and lived to tell about it. I want to make sure we do everything we can to keep the drugs out of the community. I think it's been growing and growing for years and years. I want to give Tyrone something to do other than drugs. I mean, it used to be where, at my age, we would go to the YMCA.
Yeah.
You don't have that anymore because it was torn down. We did this thing whenever I was a kid called Outside. That's where we went. I mean, there was no video games. What we did is we get out. I mean, we used to joke. My buddy said to me last night, he said, like, you need to get a watch. I said, I never needed one. I said, with the paper mill whistle, it's 7 o'clock, time to get up. 8 o'clock in the school season, it was time to go to school. 4 o'clock, time to go home. Or back whenever in the summertime, 7 o'clock, time to get up. 8 o'clock, go play wiffle ball. Noon, go home, eat lunch. 1 o'clock, go to the pool. 4 o'clock, time to go home, get dressed in your uniform for the ball game that night. So you always knew what time it was for the paper mill whistle. And I've never needed that. I just want to make sure we have things for kids to do, have things for adults to do everything we can to partner with outside agencies to get the drugs out of town. And the other thing I think that Tyrone needs more than anything is transparency.
Yeah.
We have, I think the last meeting I went to, they were on the 1400th borough ordinance. Can't find them.
No.
I went looking for the borough home rule charter. Can't find it. This stuff needs to be public, so if you want to know what the law of the community is or what you have to abide by, here it is on the borough website.
Yeah.
That's not there. And I want to make sure that we are transparent, so if somebody's wondering, why did I get hammered for a code enforcement violation? Well, here's the code, it's right there. Here's what your house needs to have, here's what this, blah, blah, blah. I want to make sure it's as transparent as possible. If you go to congress.gov, you get every committee meeting synopsis. You get a readout of every law that's passed. You get the basically the nuts and bolts of it in a quick summary.
Yeah.
But then you have the written language of that law where you can look in and see, okay, this building is got $30,000 to be funded toward doing such and such, or this is why they renamed this post office in honor of somebody. It's written line by line in the federal budget, and it's there for you to see.
Yeah.
That's not there in Tyrone, and we need that.
And that just clears everything up so much. I mean, that just betters the town. And it's just like 1% at a time. That will help so much in the long run.
Yep, I think it will.
Now, John, who's your biggest role model just in your life? It could be any aspect of your life. Who is your biggest role model?
Oh, my mom for sure. Nobody believed in me more than my mom did. I mean, every time I was probably, if you would look for a picture of underachiever at Tyrone High School, my picture's probably right there. I mean, I graduated 141st out of 189 in 1984, and I was in the first talented and gifted class that Tyrone ever had. So I proved that I'm an underachiever. I actually opened up my diploma on stage to make sure all the signatures were there. But my mom was always there to believe in me when I was drum captain of the band in high school and I had a drum solo. And it was funny, we would listen to the tapes of playback for what the judges had to say. You could always hear my mom right before the solo, "That's my son!" Never failed, loud as could be on every tape. Matter of fact, one time Jerry Roberts asked me, he says, "John, can you keep your mom settled down? I don't want to hear her on every tape we do." Mr. Simpson believed in me. Gave me my shot in radio when I was 14. Always there to help. I had so many mentors when it came to here at the high school between Mr. McNeilis, Gordy Norris, Mr. Butler, Coach Miller. I mean, I played for Coach Miller in minor league. And my funniest story with him that I'll never forget, Barb, his oldest daughter, she was the best hitter. She could hit with anybody, and I hung a curveball, and she put it over the fence down at Shea Field. But thankfully, they didn't have a pole at the line, and Pat Patterson, who was the umpire, called it foul.
Wow.
So the next pitch, I drill her. So I put her right in the ribs. And Coach Miller comes out to check on Barb, and then he comes out to talk to me. He goes, "Well, John, she did hit that thing a hell of a long way. I think that's probably the right thing to do to drill her. But remember, that's my daughter. Don't hit her in the ribs. Aim for the butt. That way she has some cushion." But that's how Coach Miller was. He always wanted to win. He always wanted to take care of his family, but he always wanted to win. So Barb was family until she stepped in the batter's box,
Yeah.
and she was an opponent. But when she was out of the batter's box after she got drilled, she was his daughter again. But then he's coaching me of how to drill her without hurting her. So
Hurting her own daughter.
yeah, in the Army, I had Colonel Rich Breen, who basically allowed me to change the way the Army did radio. I had Sergeant Major Ray Cordell, who basically accepted that I wasn't going to be the typical soldier who was going to say, "Yes, sir," "No, sir." I'm going to kind of do things a little offbeat, but he always protected me. And I mean, Barb Lewandowski, who hired me at Arlington National Cemetery, I'll never, ever be more thankful to somebody like that. I mean, again, if you walk into the place and you're surrounded by heroes, there's no place more sacred in this country than Arlington National Cemetery.
What was your favorite part of your job? Actually, let's switch up that question. Let's go. What was your favorite job that you held? Your favorite station, anything?
Well, again, like the first question you talked to me about was achievements. It's like, that's a tough one to nail down. I mean, Arlington, where we hit 2 billion sets of eyes to tell the story about the 100th commemoration of the unknown being laid to rest. Being able to rename the street after General Greene. Being on the field for Game 1 of the 2013 World Series. There's a picture of me. I have it at my house. It was on a book cover. Mary J. Blige sang the anthem. There were 3 Medal of Honor winners, or recipients, who threw the first pitch out. But we had our color guard there, and somebody had to take the picture, and darn luck, it happened to be me. So I'm on the field at Game 1 of the World Series, and it's funny, the McNeilis brothers are blowing up my phone because I'm standing there with my camera. They're introducing the Cardinals. Leading off number 13, Matt Carpenter, he goes running by, and when he ran out of the camera shot, there I am standing there looking like this with my camera in my arms. I'm getting blown up because I'm on national TV because I was at Game 1 of the World Series. I got to see Tom Brady win 3 AFC championships.
Tom Brady's terrible.
On the field. I mean, I wasn't on the field, I was in the stands.
You got a little,
how many did your boy Aaron win?
Okay, listen, you got a little obsession with Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers better than Tom Brady. Nah, I'm just kidding.
Okay, Danielle, ground is. He will never be allowed out again. No college for you. You will live in a dungeon. That's like sacrilegious. And your mom will kill you.
I know. My mom's a big Patriots fan, but, I bleed green and yellow.
Yeah, and your dad fell on his head because I coached him in T-ball. And he took one in the head. So I know where the indentation and the craziness came from him. It's so funny whenever I was going through things, it's like, you asked me at one point my ties to Tyrone. It's like, well, we moved here when I was 3. My dad grew up in Tyrone, but he moved back. And we moved to the trailer court. 2 doors down from us was your great-grandmother.
Really?
And your grandmother was still living at home, and your Aunt Becky was still living at home. Then I met your mother when she was 2 days old, because she brought her out to see your great-grandmother. So I've known your mother since she was 2. I mean, your family and I go way back because I coached your dad in T-ball. I mean, I know them all. So it's just one of those things. Tyrone is such a great little community where everybody does know everybody and everybody's friends with everybody. And you really can't get away with crap because your mom knows somebody and I know somebody, or somebody's going to rat you out. And you just pray that somebody else kills you before you get home because it's going to be worse at home.
Everyone knows each other.
Yep.
Producer, who's your favorite NFL team?
Don't have one.
That's a lie.
I don't.
Yeah, what is it? Just give us one team that you like. See how Mr. Hollywood reacts to it.
Let's go with the 49ers.
I can live with that.
No, I can't.
It's not Green Bay. It's not the Steelers.
Okay,
It's not the Cowboys. I can live with most anything else. The Philadelphia Eagles I'm tired of already because, the tush-push sucks. It's the worst play in the history of football.
The Packers are trying to ban it. That's why the Packers
smart
are
move.
on top.
But, I got to see 20 years of greatness. If you think about it, you can talk your Aaron Rodgers game all you want. Let's do the numbers. Tom Brady, 7 Super Bowls.
He's better.
Tom Brady went to the AFC Championship 14 straight years. 14 straight years.
Be a bandwagon.
10. Oh, no. I was a Patriots fan back in the day with Steve Grogan because he wore a horse collar.
Did you brainwash my mom?
No.
Is that why she's a Patriots
fan?
fan?
I don't know why, but I'm happy. We use them on our side. But I've been a Patriots fan since the days of Steve Grogan, Sam Bam Cunningham, Russ Francis, Stanley Morgan. I cried the day Darryl Stingley was paralyzed.
I don't even know.
Go back to the 70s. That's how long it's been. Don't call me a bandwagon guy. I went through a lot.
Tom Brady.
Went through a lot of 2-14 and 3-13 years before we got to Brady and Belichick, and I will savor every moment of it.
I'm still taking the Packers there. The Packers are winning the Super Bowl next year, easily. They have
producer. Can you test him for crack?
They have a high caliber team.
Yeah.
And just Jordan Love. You give him a receiver one, and he's going to do big things.
No.
Yes, I'm a believer.
I don't think so. I think Detroit's still loaded.
Yeah, I will say that.
Minnesota.
No.
If they figure out their quarterback situation. If they keep Darnold, fine. If they go with J.J. McCarthy, he'll be fine. I think
fine
their
with that.
defense is phenomenal in Minnesota. And Chicago's not going to suck because they got Detroit's offensive coordinator who's going to learn how to bring Caleb Williams out. They've
Yeah.
got 2 solid receivers. All they need is a line.
Let's talk about the Patriots, though.
We need a line.
You need everything.
No, we got quarterback.
Okay, yeah.
Drake
actually-
May is legit.
And who's the backup quarterback?
Joe Milton.
I like him. He's
He
good.
was at Tennessee. I mean, he can throw the ball 80 yards in the
Yeah.
air.
He's good.
So
I
if
like
you want to
him.
bring a Hail Mary, you can throw it from the 1 and hopefully get the tip drill going and probably still be able to pull it off. They're weak on the line. They need a receiver 1, which broke my heart when Cincinnati decided to franchise T. Higgins again.
Yeah.
But I could see them going after Cooper Kupp or Chris Godwin. Cooper Kupp would thrive in Josh
Oh,
McDaniels' offense. Just picture, if you look, Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, Cooper
Chris
Kupp,
Hogan.
same thing. Chris Hogan was outside though, but I mean,
Ah.
put Kupp in the slop and he turns and does fine. But I mean,
Danny Amendola.
well, playoff Amendola. I mean, and I think one of the best quotes ever was, "Did you watch the Dynasty with the Patriots?"
I did not. My mom did.
Yeah, you should. Learn about real football, not this Green Bay stuff. But Danny Amendola had the greatest quote in the world. He's like, "We work for Bill Belichick, coach of the Patriots. We play for Tom." And if you look at the way your team was this year, you guys worked for Coach Franco. You played for Ashton. You played for each other. And it was really cool seeing all of you guys this year. There was a couple of you, like you, Dante, first-year players who were contributors. I mean, you could tell you were a wrestler, true and true, by the way you played secondary.
Yeah.
Very few people got away from you unless they bulldozed you. And still you
I still
were
tackled him.
holding on with
Yeah.
a double leg to take them down. So they didn't really get away from you. You were a solid tackler in your first year of football. But seeing your team grow together
Yeah.
and seeing there was never the give up because, I mean, heck, Guilfoyle was running you out of the field and you guys came back and made it tight. You guys, in reality, the way the season started, had no business being on the field with Bald Eagle area and you beat them in overtime. And you guys had Penn Cambria.
Yeah.
And for some reason, the second half just didn't work out. But, I mean, you guys had a great season. I mean, you cannot ask for better, especially when the running joke, and Coach and I talked about it every Thursday, that the line, he could look most of them in the eye. And
Yeah.
Coach Franco is what, 5'6"?
Yeah.
If you're looking
Not that tall.
you're looking at your line in the eye and you're that short, you're in big trouble. And the way Ashton was able to roll the pocket out or have timing, and plus the way Seth Hoover came through, being the second, I mean, him and his dad Scott, the only father-son 1,000-yard rushers in Tyrone history. And I mean, Tyrone football has always been a passion for me. Carrie Naylor and I mean, you have Grace and Jenna with your team here
They're
at the
in this
Eagle Eye.
class.
And I worked with Carrie, their dad. We used to put the football preview together the weekend before the season. We would basically go to the Herald office Friday night and stay all night and stay Saturday and have it done Sunday. And one year we had a 48-page football preview focused on Tyrone, Bellwood. We do Big 8, we do ICC, and then we do a little college and NFL. But, I mean, 48 pages and we put it together in a span of 3 days was pretty cool.
Now, John, before we wrap up this podcast, is there anything you want to add, anything you want to say, anything about your career or your hopefully future career of Mayor of Tyrone? Anything you want to add?
Well, it was funny when I first thought about joining the military, I almost looked at myself as a failure for having to do it because there wasn't a full-time job available and I got tired of not being a contributor. I mean, I was doing what I enjoyed doing, but whenever I joined the Army at first, I thought it was kind of a failure, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I got to go around the world. I've got to see so many people, work for generals, meet generals. I've seen presidents, worked with presidents, interviewed Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense. It's been a real lucky life that I've had. And I mean, I grew up in a trailer park.
Yeah.
And to be able to accomplish all the things that I have growing up in the trailer park at Tyrone and in the 80s, 70s and 80s, living in the trailer park wasn't worth anything. I mean, you were basically viewed as the lower class of the community. And being able to do what I've done since then has been just short of a miracle. And the chance to give back is always something I always look to do, because somebody took the time to teach me everything I've ever learned. Now it's my turn to give back.
That's awesome. Well, I want to say congrats on retirement.
Thank you, my friend.
And thank you for being on this podcast. I really appreciate it. Make sure you guys stay tuned. Check out the next podcast. We're going to go into spring sports preview. Back to our normal. Austin Lucas will be back on, and Landon will still be behind the camera. Thank you guys for watching.